All right. Okay, we're off and running. So, welcome everybody, both those in attendance live tonight, and again, welcome to those of you that will be watching this at a later date. We're joined tonight by Rob Manuel, who has a Bachelor of Science in Petroleum Engineering. He's the Production Excellence Lead with Shell, and he's joining us actually from down under in Australia. Rob, before we get going, I do want to make sure that we recognize that we are on the traditional territories, the Inca, Kaplan, and Silk people. And with that, I do want to turn it over to you, Rob. Once again, welcome and thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for that, Dave. It's been we've obviously been spending a couple of weeks planning this, and there we go, see how it goes. And thanks for that introduction, and welcome to everybody that's again in attendance to this, and as well as for those who are going to watch it later on. Hopefully I can impart here some a wealth of information for you in relation to what I do as a petroleum engineer, and can take questions once I get through a bit of this, and hopefully if you have questions afterwards as well, we can get connected, and I can try to answer something. So one of the things that I guess I'll start off with is how did I get to what was my pathway to how I got to become an engineer. So obviously a lot of people online will know that I'm from the Merritt area. I grew up on the Upper Nicola Band. I attended school, elementary, grade 1 and 2 was just up there in Douglas Lake Ranch. Then I went to Nicola Lakes for elementary, Ken Guard, NBJSS, and then MSS. So I've spent all my years up through to grade 12 in Merritt going to school there. I had obviously part of the community, played ice hockey, played on some baseball as well, and did a lot of the activities in and around the area. Worked in the area as well, not only as a summer student for different organizations and companies, but a little bit after I graduated from high school. So I guess one of the things I wanted to make sure that people were clear on is when I was going through grade 11, 12, probably even grade 10, I wasn't really a stellar student. It's probably because I was distracted by other things or not really clear on what I wanted to do or how I was going to do what I wanted to do. So I guess the message there is that there's no big rush at this point in time, but it does take, I guess, a bit of a commitment and a bit of an understanding to take time out now, if you're in your grade 10, 11, or 12 years, to at least start dedicating some time to thinking about what you might want to do. And that time might be actually just spending time talking to people, talking to school counselors, talking to people in the community that are of different professions, and having enough of that kind of common sense to start approaching things in that way. So again, I was education-wise, I graduated with things from MSS like bands 12, foods 12. I had earth science 11. I had, I know I had math 11. So, I had challenges in grade 10 with math. I didn't make it through. But, it's not because I didn't know what was going on. It's just that I was probably not motivated in the right way to want to participate and be get good marks in that course, et cetera. I also had, economic, I think I did some kind of an economics course, a law course, a few other grade 12 courses that actually pulled me across the line. What had happened then is I was pretty eager to get out and see what was going on in the rest of the world. So I ventured, as soon as I graduated grade 12, I moved off to live in Banff for a year. And that was, I guess, there's turning points in a lot of my story, but moving to Banff and getting to integrate and work with different people from all across Canada and obviously all across the world. Banff's kind of place where people from all over the world come to work. So I'd met people from Australia, from the UK, from different parts of Europe, and obviously from different parts all across Canada. And talking to people and understanding how they what they did and why they did what they do and how they got the education to be in some of the positions that they were in, kind of got me thinking, hey, there's something bigger out here in the world. So in essence, I owe it to a couple of key friends that I had there that challenged me to say, hey, you seem like you're a pretty intelligent guy. What are you going to do, to get further your education? At that point, I was kind of like, well, I wasn't really planning on anything. I'm done. I'm probably just going to keep working, whatever I could find. But having friends and building relationships with them enough to the point where I could trust them and get their advice actually spurred me on to say, okay, well, if I was going to go and get an education, how could I pay for it? That then led me to talking to folks in the community, talking to chief and council or educational representatives there, funding reps there, and understanding that there was funding available for me. Along the lines of funding, though, you find that I was supported by my community, but as I was in university, there's all kinds of different schemes and processes that people can get involved with to get funding for further education. And that's simply, you start talking to people. How did you pay for the courses that you went through you took when you were in university? A lot of people get a part-time job while they're in university or college and upgrading and whatnot. So again, there's ways to pay for things. And it's just a matter, again, of carving time out and starting to at least have conversation and engaging with people on those type of things. So when I graduated, I had that year off, worked it out. So I would go back and I'd have to upgrade. So because I'd graduated with not the most stellar type of courses, I had to go back to Caribou College at the time, which was in Kamloops, and I upgraded English, I upgraded my math, I took physics for the first time, and I took computer science, I took psychology, I took a whole bunch of different courses. But in the first year of upgrading, knowing how it was going to be funded and knowing, okay, I don't have to worry about the finances, and I can now move on with where I'm going to go with this. That allowed me then to really kind of stop and think and get engaged with the content of the courses. And so I took, like I said, looks like a bit of a plethora of courses in my first and second year of college. That really then dialed me in, though, to getting stuck into the technical side of things. So I took my chemistry, my physics, biology, first year biology, economics, computer science. That drove me to then apply for engineering courses at Caribou College. At that point in time, I moved on to the University of Alberta and completed my university degree there. So again, a bit of a tortuous path, but again, it hopefully demonstrates that there's no need to know everything and figure it all out right away as you're coming out of grade 12. That's no excuse to put things on the back burner, though, but I'm probably one of the kind of guys that might give people hope who are a little bit late starters. But definitely, I think if I would have worked on a few things earlier on, I might have started on my journey quicker. So that gives you a bit of an idea of how I got from there, from graduating through then to becoming a petroleum engineer. So.
Okay, thanks. Okay, bye.
13 years ago. No other
Oh,
addresses for him.
Okay, no, that's just someone's got their microphone on. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about what is a petroleum engineer. So we probably hear the classic types of engineers as a chemical engineer, a mechanical engineer, computer engineers, civil engineers. Petroleum engineers are actually very interested, or we focus on the process of getting petroleum-based products from anywhere, from somewhere in the ground to a customer. So we look at what was amazing to me is that I lived in British Columbia. When I went to University of Alberta, I was actually in mining engineering. So I was originally going to be a mining engineer and move back to Merritt, work for one of the mines and have a good life and career in the local area. Going to University of Alberta in Edmonton opened my eyes up to this thing called petroleum engineering. And I had no clue on how big that industry was and how actually petroleum engineering for the province of Alberta, petroleum in the industry in Alberta was huge, and that's what kept Alberta mostly sustained. And it was a huge industry, which extended not only all throughout Alberta, but it was in northeast British Columbia and southeast Saskatchewan. And then there were refineries and processing facilities all across Canada. So whilst I was dedicated and committed to becoming a mining engineer, I said, wait a minute, I kind of like this petroleum engineering stuff, and it's kind of got that a little bit more glamour to it. There's a lot of people who are very successful in it, but it's not an easy industry to be part of, because there's a lot of high risk scenarios and a lot of tough decisions that have to be made in relation to how you're going to produce oil and gas and get it through to the customer. So that's what we're doing. Petroleum engineers are looking at, okay, where are we going to find oil and gas? How are we then going to assess what's downhole and under in the ground? How do we then get that produced? Do we have to build facilities? Where are they located? How do we get the gas from a well, gas or oil from a well to a processing facility? And then how, do we have commercial contracts in place, et cetera? So again, when we look at the sources of oil or gas, there are going to be in hard rock, like a shale or sandstone. They're going to be deep or shallow or even on the surface. So petroleum engineers get involved with oil sands, right? So you're looking at that's what's happening up in Fort McMurray. There's a lot of open pit mining, but they're extracting the heavy oil out of the sands, sending that through to Edmonton, processing it there, and developing all the products from that facility in Scotford, just north of Edmonton and Fort Saskatchewan. So there's and that I was part of that. I worked at that facility in Fort Saskatchewan, Scotford Oil Refinery. I've also been involved with, we were looking at gas along the foothills down in southern Alberta. So deep gas, hard to get to, sour gas, meaning it had H2S in it. H2S is a very, it's not a very good gas that you want. It's produced with the methane gas, and it's actually very dangerous. A couple of full breaths of H2S can actually be lethal. So working, again, those are two types of different sources of hydrocarbons. I currently work here in Australia for a coal seam gas facility. So we actually take coal seams that are only maybe several hundred meters down, 300 to 800 meters below the surface. We produce water from those wells, which then liberate methane gas. So you're now getting a sense of, okay, there's the different types of formations, there's different sources of oil and gas, and there's also obviously going to be some different technology associated with processing those fluids, and they're going to generate different types of outputs. So when I worked at Waterton Gas Plant, Southern Alberta, we made propane, butane, ethane, methane, and actually C5 plus, which is the C5 plus is a pentane, which is the kind of gas you put in your vehicle. So here in Australia, we're basically just producing water and methane. So we basically take the water from the ground, which then eventually releases the gas in the formation. We treat the water and put it back into rivers and lakes and give it to the farmers, and we sell the gas on to different customers. So again, that's kind of wrapping up the source and the customers of petroleum products and a little bit of what I do. I guess more specifically, what I've been involved with here in Australia is when I first came here 10 years ago, I was sent here to become a field manager in a facility about 4 hours drive from Brisbane. So took my family, my wife and kids to Brisbane, worked there. I had about several hundred wells and about several hundred employees as well, all directly reporting through to me. And the company trusted me because of my credibility, and I'm a reliable individual, that I could be sent there to help manage that production facility. So that 10 years ago to now, been with the company, and I've done not just that, but moved into Brisbane and helped to drill new wells, finding new locations, confirming where the resource was, to the point where we're then now today we've got over 4,000 wells that we've drilled. We've got 2 water treatment plants that take care of all the water. We've got 24 gas processing facilities and 6 central processing facilities. So when you look at those facilities where the wells are gathered to a facility, and we've got compressors at each one of those facilities. So if I just look at the number of compressors we have out there that are mostly brand new, there's about 125 compressors. So we're spread out in an area probably about almost the size of the UK, and there's a lot going on here. So I've been involved with the early stages of that to getting it all up and running and built to the point now where we're actually operating that. And I'm an operational specialist, production operational specialist now. So I've got to the point now where I have my a high level of skill, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to within my skill set to carry on and help this company produce the gas efficiently, safely, to deal with the byproducts properly, and to create a reliable, sustainable production profile as we go forward. So that's a bit about what I do, and a little bit where I come from. And I think I might have talked, and I think you get a clear enough picture of what I've said and where I'm currently at now. So I might just go in and ask if there's any other questions, or we can get into some other details now if you guys want.
Yeah, and I just, Rob, I wanted to make sure our audience members that are watching live know too, we've had a few join us since we started, that if you do have questions as they come up, you're welcome to ask them, or drop them in your into the chat feature.
For both of us is really important. Find out if you qualify.
I actually see one that's come up, Rob, right now for you, and
What's going on there?
looking at, was your university
That's
experience?
the new spicy Szechuan chicken. And that's the ghost pepper.
Sorry, I think you're competing with it. There's someone with their mic on that's
Sure,
competing
yeah.
with it.
I'll just get a mute there. Yes. Okay, I think we got it. So sorry, Rob, once again, just a question that came through here is, was your university experience always smooth?
Well, I think from there's a couple of ways to look at it. The financial, once I secured the financial support and understood that, that kind of sets you at a foundation. But there was the number of courses that I had to take as an engineer, especially when I went into the University of Alberta. You're taking 7, 8, or 9 courses per semester, 2 semesters a year, and you're put under a lot of pressure. So that's not the easiest thing to deal with. And then you've got to try to juggle your GPA, and there's going to be courses that suffer. So then you have to think about, okay, I'll have to then drop courses, pick them up again, and figure out how I'm going to work my way through that. And that's not just me. That's how everybody, the large majority of the people are trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to make it through this? And it's not about me, like when I say it, it's about how are we going to make our way through this. So you get a lot of, I think when you get into university, the hardest part for me going from Kamloops to Edmonton, well, who am I going to be hanging out with? How am I going to get integrated into this? And how are we going to move forward? There weren't a lot. I was the only Aboriginal person in the class that I when I went to petroleum engineering. And so it's, you kind of go, well, I think maybe I'm there's a lot of different personalities. My personality though is I'm going to get in there, I'm going to muck it up a bit and make sure I figure out who I can collaborate with and team up with and work with that. So the first couple of years at the U of A were pretty hard. But you see a lot of other people struggling in different ways, right? Some people were struggling financially. Some people were struggling because they were literally from different countries. And so you start to measure your challenges against theirs, and you recognize that yes, there's a lot of challenges, but people have people there at the university are focused on what's the goal, beginning with the end in mind. What's the goal? It's a certificate, and what's the opportunity? Why are you there? You're gonna be setting yourself up for further education, etc. So I think by the third and fourth year at the University of Alberta, I was fully integrated, part of the crowd, and we knew, once we were given assignments and tasks to complete, we got onto them right away. We divided and conquered, and we worked it all out. So it happens a bit kind of slow at the beginning, but again, that's part of what I think going to those post-secondary institutes. It's upon yourself to then recognize, okay, I've got to get involved. I can't do this on my own. I was having a conversation earlier today with another fellow engineer, and he was sharing an experience with me that he tried to do everything himself. And he finally realized you need to be part of a tribe or a group of people. That how are we going to tackle this? So hopefully that covers that question off.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And actually another one came through as well, which was, what were some of the key habits that you picked up to have a successful experience at university?
So yeah, key habits. It's probably through association. But you quickly get onto the routine that you've got to be up early enough on time to make it to your classes. You got to have proper nutrition and food. That's not always possible. And then once you've got like 2 or 3 hours between classes, you really need to figure out, okay, what am I going to do here in those time slots? Find a spot and do something, or collaborate with someone on something. But most of the time, say my classes were done at 3 or 4 in the afternoon, because you had one hour after another going to classes. You then just go and grab a bite to eat. Then you pull into a library, you set up, and you just get at her with respect to getting homework and whatnot done. So I'd sit in the library, like a table similar to what I'm looking at here with my textbooks. It's probably different now because you got it all online. But it's just about setting yourself up, and you're in a library with a bunch of other people. I love that feeling of everyone's working towards something. I'd go to the law library every once in a while. I'd go to different libraries and just be part of the fabric and that community. So those habits help me get through. And again, it's that there's also just again the nutrition and finding out, okay, how are you going to manage your finances on this? The other habit was when I went the first month I went back to university, especially in the University of Alberta, the first in September, you go in, you go to the student union building, and you start looking for a job that you can do at the end of the second semester. So most companies at the time I was going to university anyways, all the oil and gas companies were there in September saying, who are we going to hire as summer students to come and work for us in May, June, July, and August. So those were some of the key things. You set yourself up there. Now you've got something to look forward to, and you just got to get the work done. So those are, and of course, we're not going to talk about any of the bad habits, but there's plenty of those, and you get challenged with that as well. But it's always good to focus on the good ones.
Excellent. So more questions coming our way here. So we'll keep going there. Once you started your work career, what made you a successful engineer over some of your peers?
Okay, so I think you're always in competition. When you look at where you're at and what you're doing, I find that it's really just going to pull up something here. I just to measure myself against what I've done, and I've got a couple of cheat sheets here that I can follow up. So I guess we where I work now, we focus on how authentic you are. How authentic are you, right? So authenticity is important, right? It's not about me working to make myself look good or I want to be a team player. So, but am I honest and true with where I'm at? So if I don't know something, I'm telling people, look, I need some help with respect to this. I might need guidance or some motivation in order to get me into a better place with respect to this. performance wise, I'm a hard worker, right? So you're always looking at, for me, a large part of my career is, yes, you get paid for a certain amount of hours a day, but when I was, especially in Calgary, you look in and you get there early enough, and there's always 10 or 15 guys there before you even get started. So you start working your way back, and like, okay, some of these people get to work at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they're leaving at maybe 5, 6 o'clock at night. So you start to think about, okay, is that conducive to the lifestyle that I want to live, or how do I want to become successful? Well, that's what the successful people are doing. So it's following a bit of suit of that. So it's to each his own, right? I've always been interested in growth. So what am I doing with respect to my personal education or the courses I'm taking? How can I expand? And so I'm willing, and I have demonstrated a willingness to do a lot of different things in my career. So I've worked in a reservoir engineering. I worked in a gas processing facility. I worked as an Aboriginal relations manager, stepping totally away from engineering and then working as a manager of Aboriginal relations for an oil and gas company. I've then come back in, and so I'm demonstrating that I'm flexible and I can go and do these things. But obviously, I'm going to need some guidance along the way and good coaching. And luckily, I've had all that, right? But people see that willingness and they want to get behind you and they want to backstop you and help you along the way. I've made plenty of mistakes, but those are a couple of things that help me. Collaboration is another one, right? So it's not about just trying to figure it out and solve it the problem myself, but it's reaching out and who else, who do I know, and who do I don't know in this organization. In case I ever need those people, I need to start building relationships with people I don't know. When I was working in the UK, I remember walking through, there's 4 main buildings in the head office. And I just, I was, my challenge to myself was try to figure out who all these people are, at least be able to say, hello, how you doing? And I'd walk the corridors, and I start to know almost everybody. And then, and when I'm saying get to know anyone, it just might be just through casual. But these people were from all over the world. Now I've come to Australia, you start to see people from all over the different assets come here, and hey, I know who you are. And we've worked together. We've had a meeting. I've heard you talk here, and it's vice versa, right? So those are the kind of things that I think have helped me significantly to get to the point where I'm at today.
Awesome. Couple more questions just from our live audience here.
Yep.
How many years did it take you to attain your degree? Was it 4?
Yeah, so I had 1 year of upgrading because I wasn't very keen on getting the right courses out of university. Then it took me I took another year of just figuring out, well, what is psychology? What is this thing called economics? Took a variety of different courses there, and then finally took 5 years to get a degree in engineering. So again, not the the shortest path. Arguably, some of my colleagues came out of high school with all the bells and whistles with respect to chemistry, physics, math, English. Those are probably the key ones. Having good marks in that, getting into what they wanted, and completing a bachelor degree within 4 years, and then a master's maybe 2 years later, and then even a PhD. So, it's different strokes for different folks, but it's funny thing you should ask. So we, University of Alberta, we had a T-shirt. We were always engineering. We're trying to raise money, so we'd make T-shirts and we'd sell them. And we said, U of A engineering could be the toughest 4 years of your life, and on the back of it, or the best 7. So,
Right.
So anyways, it took me about 7 years in total. But I don't sit here and rest on my laurels. Don't know I should have done this quicker. It just happened that way, right?
Yeah, and I think just being able to speak to that, everyone takes their own path, and success takes different pathways and looks different. And that's a great message for sure. We'll say, I see a few more questions coming in, which we'll come back to, but there's a few that we wanted to ask you, Rob, specifically. Yep. Anything that you particularly enjoy about your job? And then on the flip side of that, anything that you would maybe just caution somebody that is listening that goes, oh yes, this looks great. Things to think about if they are considering engineering as a career.
Yeah. So for me, and not necessarily a lot of Canadian engineers, but what I've enjoyed is the opportunity that I've been given to do different things. Like when I moved away from engineering to manage Aboriginal relations, I got to work with 17 different First Nation communities across Alberta and Northeast British Columbia. And it was tough, but it was so rewarding in a sense that I was engaged with folks on the front line from the Aboriginal community in relation to what we were trying to do as an oil and gas company. So that was enjoyable. But again, it's all joys for the most part. Hindsight is 2020. Right? You look back, I can only remember most of the good times, but there were some very, very tough situations because you're putting yourself into that conundrum. Well, I'm from a community, I've got elders and relatives that are looking at things in a certain way, but I work for this group of people who have investors that are, so you have to figure out a way to balance all that. So that's they come hand in hand, so to speak, right? I've also enjoyed immensely the opportunities that I've had with the company I work for. It's how I got here. I went from Canada to the UK. I lived in there, UK, for 4.5 years. I got to go to places like Kazakhstan, Tunisia, Egypt, Trinidad and Tobago, a few other different places where our oil and gas facilities were, and to help them do something different or better with respect to how they were processing or doing the different things they were with petroleum products. So immensely, we're rewarding, but again, I'm competing with a lot of people. So you've got to be, it's not like I was looking at the people I was competing with, but I was always demonstrating a willingness and aligning myself with people that were going to support me to do that. On the caution side, again, it's, when you look at the initial days of going into university. So the first year of engineering for anyone is going to be one of the toughest years of your life because it's not easy. They're going to overload you. They're going to test you. They're going to push you to a limit where you look at it. And after the first year, a lot of people then decide, I'm not going to do this, because it's really about calibrating you in your habits and your brain into, okay, this is pretty serious stuff. And engineering is a very serious business. You're responsible for doing all we do technically, but safely and environmentally friendly in a way, right? So you have to then try to mesh all that in. So it's making sure that you're going to be committed to that. Someone picking up and nonchalantly kind of wanting to become an engineer, you're going to be challenged, right? You just got to be prepared for that exponential growth and workload and getting your mind in the right space. And yeah, it's a challenge for all of us. Not everyone in the whole class had that same kind of challenge, right? And there was courses that could, that would be roadblocks for a lot of people. Even some of the smartest people in class had different challenges with different courses. We all did a course in women in engineering back in, I think it was like 93 or 94. And at that time, there weren't a lot of women in engineering. So a lot of the guys in the room were like, well, why do we need to do this? Why, so they were struggling with the content of that course and why was it important? Why is it relevant to us? So again, there's always different challenges and it's to each his own, but again, it's about perseverance.
Excellent. One more question, and I'm gonna turn it over to Jen for a bit here as well. Do you have just a most memorable experience that you could share with us?
Well, I guess it's when I actually moved from the UK to Australia, and in landing here, it's like, wow, you think, I'm from a reservation in Canada, kind of not front and center with, mainstream and this, that, and the other. And when I first landed in Australia and was on the plane to go to the field, I was just amazed. I was just like, I cannot believe I'm going to go and work here in this country and become, work, and you're thrown into it. But that's kind of like, it's unimaginable, right? And it was backed up before that though by going from Canada to work in the UK, unimaginable. So it's just, these things just, I was, I don't know, am I lucky or whatnot? I held people accountable though to the promises they made me. So in Canada, they said, you're the kind of guy we should send to head office and work there with our group of people. I said, okay, but I held them accountable to that. And then they saw, okay, hey, wait a minute, now this guy should go to Australia as well. So again, that's icing on the cake for me. It's a lot of people would think, wow, how do you get a job in Australia in oil and gas? And I happen to. So
yeah, that's great. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about some of the other professions that you work closely with as an engineer.
yeah, so just going to use a bit of a cheat sheet on the screen here. So we have competency developments for every discipline here within the company I work for now. And so I look at it, I work with people in the aviation industry because we got to travel people to and from where we got to get to work. We've got business opportunity managers, concept engineers, supply chain people, electrical engineers, geoscience people, finance people, geomatics, geophysics, health, human resources, security, environment. You got a whole thing with respect to maintenance. We've got a lot of maritime people as well because one of our where our gas goes to, it goes to an island where it's liquefied, so it actually has to go under on the water, and we need to then figure out how we're going to protect that and keep that safe and environmental side with that as well. We've got rotating specialists, so a lot of our mechanical equipment requires specialized equipment owners or people who know everything and anything about that bit of kit. We've got marketing people. What else we got there? Specialists in heat transfer, and a lot of, there's a lot of people involved with drilling and exploring for wells, etc. So it's a plethora of things. There's people from the health industry as well. We've got a doctor in the building all the time. So fitness for work is a very important thing. So if you're managing people and you got to make sure that your health, safety, security, environment are all in place, and you understand the social performance rules. What's your license to operate? What regulatory bodies do I got to work with? So you've got specialists with respect to that. So it's literally anything you can think of, right? Mm-hmm. That's the size of the industry itself, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it truly is. It's circling back to what you had said earlier. It's really a team endeavor in what you're doing, right? You're not just making these decisions out on the sidelines by yourself. You're working with a group of other professionals that all have something to contribute to the decisions that are being made.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so just to build on that a little bit, just wondering if you can tell us where you see the profession of engineering heading, or should I say petroleum engineering heading in the future?
Yeah, so petroleum and use of hydrocarbons. Yes, there's a lot of talk about solar energy, a lot of wind energy, a lot of new energies really. But the society's grown. What a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of what we use today, how we generate electricity, the clothes we wear, the chemicals we use, the roads we drive on, a lot of that comes, there's the byproducts or there as a result of the petroleum industry. So there's constant challenge with respect to, for example, if you look at heavy oil industry or open pit mining up in Alberta, northeast Alberta. Okay, so there's a way to get the oil out, but there's a ton of that up there. So how do we do that in a more environmentally friendly way. And because there's so much there, it's not going to go away tomorrow. So it's going to be there for generations. There's projects, the project that was on in southeast or southwest Alberta down in the Waterton area, that facility was, I started there in 1995. It was 30 years of history, and it's still going today, right? 25 years later. So you look at that, there's plenty of room for petroleum engineering. We're now looking, there's a lot more going on in offshore. I work in coal seam gas. So there's primary production with respect to oil and gas. So it's really drill a well and you find oil or gas and it comes up out of the surface under the natural pressures. I'm in a unconventional oil and gas project. So in other words, we're taking water out of coal seams, pumping it out, and then the gas liberated from that. So there's coal all over the world. And people are saying, well, that's actually quite expensive to do. There's easier ways to do it. So in my opinion, there's a few lifetimes left in it. Yes, there's going to be changes. There's commitments. We all have we're looking to become carbon neutral by, I think most companies are talking about the middle of the century here. So yes, that'll happen, but we'll just do things in a more efficient and more environmentally friendly way. And we're seeing examples of that all the time. Technology is huge in helping us achieve that.
Okay. What skills and interests would somebody need to be successful if they plan to go into petroleum engineering or engineering in general? Yeah,
so I kind of add knowledge to that. So you start off with when we look at anything we have as my competency development says, these are the things you need to be knowledgeable in. And these are then the things these are things you need to then become skilled in. So if I take a look at some of the things on my list, applying technical knowledge and decision making. So where do I get the technical knowledge? From textbooks, from university, from becoming educated. Someone's given me, this is how this formula works. This is how this spreadsheet works. This is how we calculate all this out. But then it's using that then to make decisions, managing wells and reservoirs. So you then go through and get you become part of a team where you've all done the textbook, the courses and whatnot, but it's then working with a team of experienced individuals on how are we going to produce that petroleum fluid, how are we going to, how big's the reservoir, what's the volume calculation. So it's working with them to develop the skill. So as time goes on, you start to pick up those skills. So you recognize that high school and university are all about the scientific or the textbook side of it. For engineers, for petroleum engineers or any engineer, it's going to be math, chemistry, physics, even biology, and it's also anything to do with computers or programming, and then also English, right? So you need to be able to communicate properly. So those are most of the key. I would say if you had a core group of those skills coming out, you're going to be setting yourself up for getting into becoming an engineer. You can also, though, if you just have something in the back of your mind that says, how does that work? How does this work? How does, people talk about just the surface processes related to producing it, gas or a coal seam, gas from a coal seam formation. It's very, very technical once you start peeling back the layers. So if you have any kind of thought or inkling that you want to dig deeper into how something technically works, then engineering's also a good idea to pursue. So other things I need to be worried about are, basics in finance, managing staff, optimizing profitability, how, management of change, managing threats and opportunities. So there's a lot of administrative type or non-value adding necessary things you do have to do though. So there's a lot of paperwork involved sometimes as well. So, but initially it's all about just getting setting yourself up for being hungry for the technical knowledge and then working with a company that's going to help you develop those skills.
Yeah, very interesting. You need all the sciences and maths for the foundational piece and to actually learn get the post-secondary education. And then as you get into the field, you really need to draw upon your team building and team playing skills. You need to know how to develop and maintain relationships with all sorts of other individuals in order to be an effective employee.
Yeah,
Great.
and just to add to that, like a lot of the management stuff or the finance stuff or the stuff that I didn't take in, textbook stuff in university or high school, they'll then bring you up to speed on all that, right? There's always constant development and training available to you once you secure a position. And if you become an engineer, you tend to work for organizations that have a real structured and good way forward for you to take up those courses and to be part of. Okay, this year you need 10 years or 10 months of 10 hours of courses. So you sign up for these online courses or they send you away. So I've had the benefit of all that. So it's, smaller companies, it depends that you have to pick that up on your own. But if you work for bigger companies, they tend to have that kind of structure in place for you.
Great. I'm going to pass the mic back to Dave for a few more questions.
Yeah. Oh, can't hear you, Dave.
Sorry about that. I was on mute there. Just a couple more questions to ask you, and then we'll turn it back over to our live audience with a few more as well. Is there, if someone's a high school student's watching this and thinks to themselves, you know what, this sounds really interesting to me, is there something they could be kind of doing right now to explore your profession in more detail to really get a taste of it?
Yeah. So I was thinking about this, and one of the and I think a lot of my friends and family will know is that if you notice on my right hand here, there's a ring on my pinky. This is the iron ring. So all engineers in Canada actually get an iron ring. So if you notice someone with this is the hand I sign and write things with. If you notice someone with a pinky ring like this, and you can pretty much open up a conversation. Hey, are you an engineer? What kind of engineer are you? And so that's how I'd recognize people, once I learned about what the iron ring was. That's how I started to approach this. Hey, you're an engineer. What kind of engineer are you? I even do it now if I see someone anywhere in the world with that. Are you an engineer? Yeah. What do you do? And it's basically being bold enough to have those kind of conversations. But it's also to, like I said at the beginning, it's to say when you're looking at, okay, well, how am I going to approach? What am I going to do? It's just to start having that conversation. It's funny how sometimes I think, yeah, this guy's the only one in the room. And I don't know if he knows anything about this, but I'm going to have a conversation with him anyways. And all of a sudden you realize that, holy smoke, this was kind of like meant to happen. Yeah, I was supposed to talk to you because you find out a different way of how they think, or they might say, hey, I've been thinking about the same thing, or here's someone you should talk to. So it's really opening up and being more collaborative with respect in putting the subject of your career in that space. What am I going to do? Who do I talk to? Yeah, just go start having conversations. Look for support. Find the people that are going to support you in that effort. So there's people in school, there's friends, and if you're hitting, not getting anywhere there, it's finding. Just continue to look for people like that, teachers, family members. Like I said, find someone with an iron ring, start having conversations.
Yeah, excellent. And great advice there. I think so much can be learned from just that to sit down and have a face-to-face and one-on-one conversation with someone, and really to gain a lot from that. Do you have any just more general advice for young people, building on what you just said around considering possible career choices? Yeah,
so I'm glad you asked that. It's so I put everything when I manage a lot of people. So when I pick people or I get people assigned to work for me, I'm always thinking about, okay, what's the skill level of this individual and what's their willingness to do something? So I want someone at the end of a process to be highly skilled at doing something and willing to do something. So the opposite scale of that is, well, I have no skills and I'm not willing to do anything. So in essence, you need to figure out, okay, In that situation, you got to basically get someone to tell you what to do, right? Again, the goal is to be highly willing to do something with a lot of skill. And I'm at that, it takes time for that to happen. I'm at that point in my career now where I've got sort of that. There were times though where people had to just basically tell me, you need to get this done. It's assigned to you, or you need to find a career. This is how you don't seem like you're willing. You don't have a lot of skill in figuring that out. So find someone who's going to be able to tell you what to do. If you then look at it another way, if you've got some skill, so you're showing you're good in class, you've got a few marks, some courses that you're pretty good in, or a lot of courses that you're pretty good in, but you're not willing to do anything. You got to find someone to motivate you, or something to motivate you out of that position. So you've got to then say, okay, I've got the skills, but I'm going nowhere fast here. So find someone to motivate you, find something to motivate you. Now, if you're willing to do it, hey, I'm willing to do whatever, but I have no skill, find someone that can guide you to that, right? So it's all about finding out where you are in relation to your skill and will, and looking at what the solution is. So if you just go and Google skill versus will, I do a lot of that. I say, okay, yeah, I've got a guy, and I put a member of my team. He's willing to do a lot of this, but he has no skill in reservoir engineering. So I've got to then guide him along the way. I've got a guy who's totally skilled in working in a control room, but he's been there forever, and he's got all the skills. So I got to motivate him. Now I'm looking at all my guys, and I'm saying, guys and gals, I'm saying, yeah, now we're all moving toward being skilled and willing to do something. And so that's the formula I put in with anyone. And I don't think it's too far of a stretch of a concept for people to think about. If I'd thought about something like that when I was in, 11 or 12, just even thinking about that, I might have, gone a little quicker through something. But again, I was in no rush, right? So hopefully that gives you kind of my kind of angle on that.
No, that's wonderful. And something that in hearing that, and I know it's something we had talked about prior to this meeting too, that I'd like to utilize in having conversations, even with students, the skill and will piece. I think, really, really effective in getting people somewhere maybe that they didn't think they could get to on their own. I do want to open it back up to some of our audience members. If there are further questions, again, I'll just mention, you're welcome to jump on and ask the question, or type it into the chat, and I can forward that to Rob as well. And Jennifer, if I've missed anything, let me know too.
I'll just mention there was one question in the chat that I don't think we asked Rob. And it was, I think we touched upon part of it. It says, is there good money in your industry, and is there lots of jobs and options in the future? And you talked a little bit about the future piece. I don't know if you want to talk about the financial aspect of the engineering world.
Yeah, so I remember in university, I always thought, if you're going to be making a lot of money in the future, you're going to be a lawyer, right? Everyone thinks, lawyers, you're going to make a lot of money. And one of my colleagues, he said, hey, listen, my dad's a petroleum engineer, and look at what we have and how we live our life. And I was just totally shocked. I said, well, it's because you can make a lot of money in engineering. You can make a above average, or most of the time above average type kind of wage, and you can go for you can be totally through the roof with respect to it. So a lot of people and this is the thing about petroleum engineering, is it's got that kind of glamorous kind of side of it where you can make a lot of money. There's a lot of risk involved with it, but there's a lot of potential and upside with respect to it. So you can make as much money as a lot of people in the world. But for the most part, if you think about small town Merritt, you think about even smaller places in the world where people live, there's always an engineer or two around, right? There's civil engineering is required for any kind of building that you do. You need a facility engineer. So what's happening with the power system? What's happening with how does water get to your house? How does the sewage get dealt with? What's the infrastructure like? You usually, you might be a person who plans out places where people live, but you're always going to have engineers there to technically assure and approve what's going on there. So you can't just run up and start a power plant on your own without engineers. You've got to have engineers around, and so we're there. I'd say we're a dime a dozen. You just don't know who they are all the time, and it's a very profitable type industry.
Mhm. And it seems like there's a lot of opportunity to grow and develop. Like you may start your career like yours, for instance, in a certain field, and then slightly, move into another. So it's
Yeah.
not like you're the same thing for your entire career, right? You can
That's right. You can start off as an engineer. The biggest thing you do as an engineer is you learn how to problem solve, and you work to problem solve collaboratively. So are there problems in the world? Yes. So if you want to diversify the team that you have, there's gender diversity, there's cultural diversity, there's all these things, but it's also skill-wise diversity as well. I could be in a room and be the only engineer in here, and we're solving something technical, right? But it's all about, now they're relying on me to close the gaps and assure the technical side of this.
Before we go, and I do want to allow other people, so feel free to jump in after I'm finished, but I just want to circle back to the band funding issue we talked about earlier. I know because I've worked at NDIT for over 10 years now, and I worked as an academic financial planner, so I helped a lot of students with applying for and getting things organized for going to post-secondary. The funding application deadlines for band funding vary from band to band. So some can be as early as, March to like as late as the end of May. But I just wondered if you could speak to the importance of, getting in touch with your education coordinator as soon as possible. I know that there's a huge demand on a lot of bands, and the people that wait to the last minute often, get denied the funding, and then they have to wait the extra year to go to school. And so maybe you could just speak to that a little bit for me.
Yeah, it's all about just being on the front foot with all that. You're right in a sense that you don't, the wild card here is you don't know who you're competing against. As far as, you don't have to know the person, but you don't know the numbers that are happening. So I was someone who said, well, I took a year off, and I said, okay, I'm gonna make an application to get funding. I don't know how many people I was competing with against for the limited amount of the resources. I was fortunate enough to get in on and to work that out. I was probably arguably maybe a little bit too late. Nowadays, I'd be encouraging people to start looking at that even in year 11, to say, okay, I'm going to go through year 12. Then once I get out of there, I'm going to apply for these courses, but also think in parallel, what's the funding situation going to be like, right? So it's not just to rely on others to do that for you. Of course, people are going to see, and if they care about you enough, they're going to keep you on track, or they're going to do it for you. But you do need to take that start to think about that responsibility earlier on, so that, and what I'd found is that it's all about, I knew people who had things lined up very early in life. So it doesn't hurt to start talking about how that's going to happen with your parents or your guardians, et cetera. So, hey, how are we going to work this out? Or find someone who's gone through and said, hey, did you get band funding for this? How does that work? So there's other ways to figure that out, right? So it's just to have that in the back of your mind, though, and to try to work it through.
Yeah, and I just wanted to emphasize for any students that may be in the audience, is if they're having, they're sort of at loose ends, they don't have a connection with their education coordinator, or they're sort of wondering how to start with their band funding application form, I can certainly be a starting point, and I can help sort of connect you up with the people that you need to talk to in order to get that completed on time. Okay, is there anybody else in the audience that has a question?
I have a comment. Hello. Hi, Jan. Hi, Dave.
Hello.
Hi, everybody. Hi, my nephew.
Hello.
I just wanted to jump on so I could see you and I could hear you, and tell you how proud I am. As always.
Thank
Love
you.
you. Love
Love
you.
you too.
Hugs to the kids and Allison. And that's about it. I'm just the graduated domestic engineer.
All right. Well, thanks for that, Auntie.
Yeah, I got my degree in domestic engineering. People ask me, what's that? I'm going, well, when you figure it out, no, I'll talk with you. Anyway, love you.
Yep.
Good,
Thanks.
good to hear you. And as I said, proud of you. And I've been physically working all day and I'm hungry and I'm gonna check out, or I'll leave you on, but I'm gonna mute me and eat
Okay.
my dinner before it gets too late.
All right.
Okay, love you.
All right, thank you. Take care.
I'd like to say something. Oh, you're gonna speak, David?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No? Okay, I was gonna say, hi, Rob, I'm finally here. I was just on
Hello.
my Shilk language class, finally got off of that. But I was gonna tell some untold stories here. I don't know if Rob mentioned it. But my son would come home or after a few months at school and we'd be talking about Marx or something like that. And I'd say, oh, when did you start taking that class? He said, oh, a while ago. I decided to drop that other class and started another one. Another month or so, I'd come back, another course. I said, oh my God, what's going on, son? He said, well, that teacher didn't like me. But I understand Rob dealt with that when he spoke, gave a presentation at TRU, and that person was in the class or in the audience, and he realized Rob should not have been kicked out of his class. But then one day my son told me, he says, I can go in for engineering either at UVic or University of Alberta, and I could not believe my ears. So my son made it. Can't believe it. Congratulations, son.
Yep.
Love
Thanks,
you.
Mom. Love you too.
Yeah.
Hey, Rob.
Yep.
For those of you who don't know, Rob is my cousin, and I'm very proud of him. And tonight, listen to a story, a lot of things about that. I think that I wanted to share was in order to meet the goals and reach the goals that Rob did, it started with him. And so it starts with with that role of building some confidence. He always had habits. I loved what he talked about, skill and will. And I'll go back to merit, where everyone, let's talk about other things other than education. Rob had a lot of will in hockey, not a lot of skill. There's a job for everybody, as our coaches would always say, and they saw that in Rob. And so what I've seen, and I loved where Rob brought this tonight, was that, you know, he identified that the areas, because he was willing to do it, and it took him, it may take you twice as long, maybe 10 times as long, and work 10 times as hard to build the skill to do the things that you need to do, but you did it. And I think that would be the message that I would send out to a lot of young people, is that, you know, if you have enough confidence in yourself, if you have enough people around yourself. I heard your stories tonight about how you built your team when you went to university. A room full of strangers, really, but you found a common goal, and you built that relationship. So I was really intrigued by your story tonight, and I'm hoping that young people will find those things, because a lot of the most even when we got the Google world, see all these things and look at the YouTubes and that and whatnot, and a lot of the most successful people that have done things either had a lot of they had a lot of one thing and not a lot of other, and I think that's the one thing, is to find it and be determined to find that. So I really loved your story tonight, so I thank you for that, and thank you for sharing, and I hope a lot of young people will listen to your words tonight and carry them away, because I think your story wasn't, when you did these things, it may start out that you do it for somebody. You may have done it for your parents, right? Or you may have done it for your peers, but in the end, you're by yourself at a university hundreds of miles away, and you did it for yourself. And then the stuff that you brought back for everybody else was because of what you did for yourself. So thank you for sharing that tonight.
Thanks, buddy.
Okay. And I think a great way to finish this evening. And Leonard, thanks for jumping on there. Rob, I want to say thanks again for joining us tonight. We really appreciate having you and your expertise and just sharing your wisdom with us. And I can't wait for more of our students to see this in the future.
You bet.
Yeah. Thank you, Rob. And I just wanted to mention that we will be making these recordings available to MSS students, as well as we're trying to figure out a way to make them available through NVIT to NVIT students. It will likely be through the Learning Commons Moodle site, which is publicly accessible, but I need to connect with the Learning Commons to make sure that we have a plan for that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, again, thanks to you, Rob, and thanks for everyone for attending tonight, and take care.
You bet. Thanks for the opportunity and take care.
You got it.
Thanks so much, Rob.
Bye, guys.